Mary Jo Johnson, Council on Aging.
Great. Thank you all for your willingness to serve. And just on the administrative side, has everybody gotten sworn in?
5 minutes ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, great. Oh, and Mary Ann's joining us too. Great. And Mary Ann Antonellis, our library is a guest this morning. So I'm not sure if we need a chair, vice chair, and secretary, but we need somebody to chair and somebody to take notes. So I am willing to chair unless somebody else is really dying to do it. Okay. All right, so do I hear, okay. Here, take this on. I'm not an officer on the select board, so it's easy enough to take this on. So do I hear a motion for me to chair the committee?
I move that Rita takes on the responsibility of chair of the MN Spear Library Reuse Committee.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And is anybody willing to take the minutes?
This is our busy season in the FinCom and I'm doing a lot of work
Yeah.
on that, so
Yeah.
I'm not gonna volunteer.
Anybody else? Brennan, how would you feel about doing it?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think there'll be a lot of meetings.
are they gonna be all during the day?
They,
'Cause I can't do evening.
evenings, okay. Well, that's something we were gonna talk about, I'm guessing, if for this group, that they would probably be during the day, yeah, okay. Yeah, so Brennan, would you be willing to do it? Okay, I can help you with
Yeah.
it too. And are we doing, the AI, are we recording these two?
They should be, yeah.
Yeah, I heard.
Okay.
They did.
All right. Okay, so Brennan will take the notes. Okay, so I just wanted to go through the committee charge. Originally, we assumed that there'd be 7 members. We didn't have that many people volunteer, so we're a smaller committee. And I think that's fine. I think this is a good size and basically what the charge of the committee is to look at what we do with the library building. So it's a great resource, it's very visible. It's you know, we have to, in order to keep the building insured, the building has to be heated. So it has to be in some sort of continuous use, quote unquote, to be insured by under our municipal insurance. And you know, I know in other communities, you know, when I was doing some work in the town of Amherst, continuous use can be, you know, that the building is, somebody's going into the building and checking on it and you're keeping the heat on. You know, in the case of this building, we don't have any plumbing in there, so there's not the freeze problem. But you know, it's not great for any building to just sit and be empty. And so we really want to see if we can figure out what we want to do with this property. So what the vision of the select board is that this committee would think through how that building might be used, what's the kind of the highest and best use for the building, and then come up with a plan, and that would include a proposal kind of describing what it would cost, so kind of a conceptual plan. And you know, we are, as Susie well knows, you know, these are really tough financial times. We're about to open up our new library too. So this is more, this is like square footage that, you know, we're currently paying for heat and caretaking, but with the library, this will be, additional space. So, and that's an old building. That if you as we will take a look, there, is certainly a lot that could be done to that property. So we really need to be thinking about what's the highest and best use, and then what is it gonna cost? And can we afford to do what we might wanna do? So that's what, when we have a bunch of tasks kind of listed here, which we can go through, and talk about kind of what those steps are. And maybe that's where we go next. Any questions?
Sure. Is this a situation where there are potential state grants available that we could be tapping into for reuse?
That is to be explored. CPA funds could potentially be used for this building under historic. So I already just, in passing, said something to Mateo. So yes, we could use CPA funds. CPA funds could be used towards the historic preservation part of it, but not for what's considered maintenance or upkeep, but rehabilitation. And the big issue with the CPA funds is that when you use them under historic, you have to follow the, there's certain guidelines, which I'm just gonna forget. It's, I always want to call it the Department of Parks, but it's not. There are preservation guidelines that have to be abided by. So that's, and that, could potentially add extra cost. But we have a lot of CPA funding. So.
Good. Second question, I'm sure we'll be getting into this more later, but has the select board been lobbied very much already, for groups in town or, people who would like to see, certain uses of that building?
The only discussion that I know of, and I have not been directly lobbied, but there was, I know, under, our previous town administrator, when Becky was here, the police department said that it was almost like it was a, fait accompli, that they were gonna be moving there. And, I think our board, that's not the case. The reason why we're having this is like, it's not any one department's, sole decision and that's why I think this, it's important, to have input from, not only this committee, but I think at least our vision is that we reach out to boards and committees in town to assess, what are the needs out there? And then make a decision based on the needs and then the costs. Because let's say it isn't the police department, let's say, some board or committee said, well, we want to use it, but for their purposes, it was going to cost $500,000, whatever, they needed 3 bathrooms and so forth and so on. And we said, well, somebody else, equally, and it was gonna cost us $100,000, and you might say, okay, you could be equally served staying in town hall. And so I think those are the things we're gonna have to weigh. So it's not a done deal for anybody. But the goal of this committee is to lay out some alternatives to gather information I think beyond what, I mean, we have a lot of really great information already about the physical structure, but what we don't have is what are the real needs and, you know, what are the costs?
Good.
So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
At the moment.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we step through the tasks? Is that, put that next on the agenda? The first is to conduct a municipal needs assessment and develop a conceptual plan for reuse of this building. And I think this is really combined, this first bullet and the second bullet probably are kind of the same thing. So that is, or combined into one. So that is trying to figure out who needs what. And one way we could approach this is to survey all committees and boards and staff in town departments. To say, so right now, the way we're organized is we have how many different people housed in this building?
Different offices.
Yeah, offices. So we have the treasurer. Sure. And these, the town clerk. The town administrator. Should have had this written out. We'll have to do a little chart. We had the,
Police department.
police, assessors. Tax collector, yep. Yep.
Land use,
Board of Health and use,
administrative assistant.
yep. The treasurer, accountant, town clerk, town administrator, assistant, administrative assistant, police, assessors, tax collector, board of health, land use clerk. Is that it? And then separately, the departments, we have the fire department has like his own office downstairs. And the highway department has he has sort of an office in the highway garage. I call it sort of an office because it's not much there. And so, and then we have boards and committees that use this building. So we have, and so the Council on Aging has this room dedicated. And I don't think there's no other committee that I know of that has any sort of dedicated space. Once upon a time, the library has a cabinet.
Oh, that's record storage.
Record storage, yeah. Yeah. And record storage does factor
Everywhere,
everywhere.
and it has a report to.
Yes, it does. And I intended to read that before today, but I didn't. I've read it once a long time ago, but it is a big factor in all of this. So Susie's sort of knowledge and background in that is really valuable because it's a very big issue. A lot of real estate, I call it real estate, this building is taken up with file cabinets. You know, it's a space that has been, yeah, just because of the way it's configured, it's really inefficiently used. I mean, even if you look at this massive room now, we're huddled here in front of the TV. So I think there's probably much more efficient uses of the space, but because you take an old school and, you convert it, it's never ideal.
Well,
And
the idea that this is a meeting room specifically because it has the equipment is an entity in itself. So it
Yes.
can be on that list because it has to be dealt with.
so select board meeting room
Well,
is,
you know, at the rate that the state's going, other people will be trying to choose between meeting in person and meeting with hybrid. And it's the hybridness that's
right.
centered.
So, so I think one of our challenges is it's related, the reuse of that building does relate back to what goes on here. And so what we hear from the department heads and from the boards and committees has some impact on what we're doing. So, for example, if the Council on Aging said, well, we'd really like the MN Sphere building and we're willing to say, you know, we're gonna use it for activities and so forth, and we want that dedicated, and then that frees up that room, then how does that, you know,
The
does that
domino
work?
effect.
Yes, yeah. So I don't wanna, say outright, our charge is gonna be expanded, but, you know, it will help if we can think through what that, you know, what those other steps might be. And, what Haley and Brennan have been doing kind of as a, first step, not in this process necessarily, but because it just needed to be done, and I think the select board has, you know, has set it as a priority, is dealing with the fact that practically every office in this building has become a storage room. And that, you know, we have we have we have files and we have boxes, and I think, and some of it's already been addressed, that, again, there's a lot of floor space that's taken up with, yeah, with stuff that could go into a dumpster, quite frankly. And there were old printers and, so a lot of that's getting cleaned out. It just gives us an opportunity to really think about what's, you know, what's the, again, highest and best use, because we're paying for this and we're paying for heating this space. So let's, and electricity and everything else, let's make sure we're using it in the best, you know, in the best way possible. So my initial thought was that, if we could come up with some sort of a brief questionnaire for boards and committees and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's different. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Maybe there's a separate questionnaire for boards and committees than there is for people who are currently in town hall. And it could be really brief. It's like, you know, everything from, for people who are currently here, how many days a week are you in the office? How many hours? Because I think it's important to know, if somebody's here 1 day a week, 3 hours, and they have a full office to themselves. I know where I used to work, I would come in 2 days a week. And then they said, okay, well, we're gonna, you know, reconfigure things and put you in a different space, because why do you have, you know, a private office with a door? If you're, when we have somebody else who's here 5 days a week, who's, you know, in a hallway. I said, fine, I get it. But anyway, how many days a week you're here, how many hours in that day? what do you currently have in your office in terms of storage? And, what do you need in terms of space that you don't currently have? For example, do you need a table? So some people might want to have a private meeting in their office, like the town administrator. I know Becky once, she said she went to Sunderland, she goes, and I have a table in my office with chairs, like, I can have a meeting in my
Mm.
office now, I don't have to get up and, go out when I wanted to, when I want to sit down with, a couple of people. Is there anything else that you need? And just think about, gathering that kind of information. And that's a little bit different from boards and committees. But the information we might gather from them is, do you meet in person or not? Are you meeting in person or are you meeting, having hybrid meetings? If you're meeting in person, do you, where do you typically meet? And how many people, are involved? What what are your space needs? Like, for example, the plan, I don't know what the planning board, can't remember if they meet in person or hybrid. But I think when I've gone to their meetings, I've gone in hybrid, so I can't recall, but,
LWAC, I think, meets in person.
right.
And, the library building committee.
Right, but like if you were meeting in person and you needed, like you always had an audience there. So you needed a space where people come, like for our meetings, the select board needs to have. The ability to have 10 or 12 or 15 people sometimes that come to our meetings, not every meeting, but we typically have people in person and we have people who participate remotely. So that's my thinking is that we do, does that make sense?
It does, and I can imagine kind of almost a next step from this committee's work is maybe a reshuffling of space in this building, so.
Absolutely.
I don't see that as, I don't see it here as our
Mhm.
responsibility, but I can imagine that might be a consideration that we should be thinking of, that,
Yep.
well, if we move so-and-so over there,
Mhm.
then so-and-so could
Yes.
move into this, but, so, I mean, should that be part of our thinking?
I think we could add that once we kind of gather all our information. I don't know that we want to say that now, but I think we could add that on, yes.
Yeah.
Because definitely, I see that could be, that you would reconfigure things.
And also, the process of meeting has changed radically since COVID.
Right.
And, before COVID, we would have meetings in this building, people in the kitchen, because there was not enough meeting space. And that was including an office that's now taken over. So, now with the state rule that it has to be hybrid, it totally limits having meetings, in here, in person at all, because it has to be hybrid.
Right.
And so this is dictating the meeting space. I don't know if that will always be true. So whatever plan we make, we will probably need to allow for some people to begin to meet in person, and maybe it could be without having a hybrid, in which case space would be easier to manage. Right now, this is the space. That's crazy.
So we have, Gail Huntress applied for and received a grant for the, applied for on behalf of the town and received a grant to purchase all new technology. So we now have another complete setup that we're in the process. This is the first piece of it. We're gonna have another hybrid I mean, another screen, owl. So we could have another meeting room in this building. So you could have two hybrid meetings going on at once. If we have a dedicated space.
Right, which takes up quite a space.
Right, so we have to, to think about that, where would we do that? And the library is gonna have that too, I imagine, I don't know what you'll have two places there. I don't think the library anticipates routinely hosting regular town committee meetings.
But it can,
But it
but
can,
it absolutely, so, it can, if it fits into the schedule.
right, right,
Right, the library will be available to everyone, so, but it couldn't be something like,
every month,
right, or
Right.
every month.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
You know,
Are you saying you're gonna have two spaces or two setups?
we're gonna have two rooms with AV meeting. So, two separate rooms with hybrid meeting.
It's great,
Yeah,
So-
one that seats 50 and one that seats 4,
So is that the
the small study.
small study?
Yeah, so again, Gail Huntress from the Broadband Committee got a grant that's paying for the AV equipment for a small study.
so that really expands our capacity and, I think the hybrid thing, Susie, my guess is that it's here to stay. People really seem to like it, and I think it, it allows people, especially in the middle of winter and people don't want to drive up here, to attend a
Right.
meeting. It really is, it's nice that people can attend, and or older people, whatever, don't want to drive in the dark.
So I have a question.
Yeah,
So could a setup like this be over at the MN Sphere?
yes,
And then one thought is that, when we ask committees or people who have office space here about moving over there. So two questions for them is, why is that important? And what are the disadvantages? I mean, from separating from right now being part of this one building?
mhm,
I mean, for instance, small, it's a short walk,
right,
but.
but it doesn't have.
Dangerous law.
It's a
Right,
dangerous
and in the
one.
winter.
Right,
um,
and it doesn't currently have running water,
Right,
or
or bathroom.
bathroom, right? And that's part of, I think, what we have to explore. Right, so let's say the Council on Aging, let's go back to them. They said, we would want that building, but we need to have a bathroom and a kitchen. Because otherwise, it's just not viable. Okay, so we factor that in. But that's a good point, but so it is one of the questions. Would you want to move over to that building? Do we ask people outright? And if yes, why? If no, why not? So is anybody willing to come up with the questions for the, I think if we can keep it like a questionnaire to like 4 or 5 questions.
I would do that.
Okay,
Sure.
great.
And I would think that the first questionnaire might then lead to more questions that you might ask.
Right.
Yeah,
So I think, something short, several questions to get a response. Like if a particular office says, we have no interest, okay.
okay, good. You just put them in a
Bingo.
pile,
Right.
right, and say. And do you think dividing it up between department heads and then boards and committees, since they're two sort of separate groups, right? Or is it one?
In my mind, they're separate. I mean,
Okay.
we're talking about, day-to-day
Yes,
town employee
Right.
functions versus occasional meetings.
Yes,
Essentially, so
okay.
they're very different in my mind.
Okay, great. Yes, yeah, thanks, Paul. That's great.
Okay, so I will take a stab at just before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Just coming up and
Mhm.
distribute that.
And then we would, and maybe, when you have time, Brennan, if you could just create, a spreadsheet with all of the current offices here. And then we'll do a, check off, people are here on a part-time basis. I mean, you might already have something like this, like who's in what, who's in what office and when they're here.
Okay, yeah, I think, I don't currently, I know, I think the
Haley might
town
have.
clerk might have.
Have
At one point.
something, yeah, I knew we were keeping kind of a calendar, but just to, like, I didn't realize that Ryan had a desk in the assessor's room behind Ellen. I didn't realize that there was another desk
Treasurer. Mhm.
behind there. And then somebody else said today, I said, oh, I didn't.
The town nurse, I think, didn't make the list.
Oh, good point, town nurse,
Yeah.
yep,
So before we leave the questionnaire thing, so are we saying we should have two separate ones maybe for like committees
Yes.
versus, okay,
Yeah.
two separate questionnaires?
yes,
And just to make sure I'm kind of even, I'm in the right ballpark, you know, if any of you have, you know, ideas or input, you know, that you want to feed me first, I would incorporate that into my
Okay.
first draft.
okay, all right, great.
In the committee of this status, are we subject to forums and open meeting law for communication?
Yeah, so
So two
everything,
people could work on something
yes,
together.
yeah, and
But-
we could, I think we could, feed stuff to Paul. We can
Okay,
give
some
you,
deliberation there.
yeah, no, just no back and forth. But if we have ideas, yeah, I'll try to kind of come up with,
If Paul put something up on Google Docs, could we look at it and individually give suggestions or no?
we can't give them back to him,
Period.
yeah,
We can't, so we couldn't together look at
no, no, because that's a, that's
because
a.
we're looking at
yeah,
it at separate
yeah.
times, but
Yeah, yeah, and that's you're such a meeting outside of a meeting, you know, you're
yeah,
working
because
on
we're
it,
collaborating on
yes,
something.
yeah.
else.
But people could email him a suggestion.
Yeah, but not, no back and forth.
Right.
So email me suggestions, I
Yep.
could then put something up, and then you
At
could
the
look
next
at it, we
meeting.
can discuss it at the next
Next
meeting.
meeting, yep. Yeah. And, yeah, I would say because we want to get as much participation as possible, if we can, and not lengthy answers, just to make it either as much yes and no, or check off the box or whatever. Answers to the questions, but let's see how we can do. That would be great, and yeah, so the goal is to. If we can get that finalized then at the next meeting, sort of get that out, that will help inform. You know, for us, that will give us a lot of, information.
Can I just jump ahead?
Yeah,
To the last task, which is the target date of November first.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I mean,
unrealistic, yeah, we got started much later, yes.
Especially when we start
Yeah.
talking about questionnaires and
Yeah,
all, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Okay,
that's,
okay.
yeah, in fact, we we're gonna talk about schedule, where did I have that on my? No, this was very ambitious and this was done well, you know, much earlier.
Yeah.
So I would say February. Maybe February 1st. It will all depend upon, yeah, how quickly we can get information together. All right, so we've covered kind of a lot of this, as far as kind of additional public input, I think, we'll have to decide once we get everything back from the boards and committees and, and department heads. Then sort of the hard work starts, because we need to then really take a long look at this piece of information. And, so the library building committee and with Steve was the chair when this was undertaken.
I mean, the building,
The building
Shutesbury
committee, I'm
building.
sorry, the building committee, Shutesbury Building Committee. And you're on the library building committee
Correct.
too, right? Undertook an evaluation of all town buildings. And so they went from building to building and did, a really thorough evaluation. And, Steve, do you want to just give kind of an
Sure.
overview?
Well, just a little background. So professionally, for 40 years, I was a home inspector in Baltimore, Maryland. So when the building committee was reformed, I became chair and I led the way to develop this spreadsheet. And then I pretty much did the inspections. Because what I found is it's hard to take a group of people that don't have the experience and keep them off focus. So it was much easier for me to go through, and there were times where I'd have somebody with me. But so all this information, I pretty much am responsible for, so I can easily talk about it. Just quickly on the MN Sphere Library, when we looked at that building, when I looked at that building, one of the critical components is there's the front entry, which has settled. And I started to look into is it CPA or CPC?
CPA money.
CPA
Yeah.
money, and got as far as to find that would qualify, because that's gonna need structural renovation. And, but then because of other things like the new roof on the school and then, other things that we were coming up with, we just tabled that. But that could be explored again. And I think what, Rita's talked about, I looked at a little bit, since the building's not on the historic register, well, you still have to comply with certain requirements. There's more room for, I'll call it interpretation or possible, use of materials that aren't historically correct. But, if you take into consideration the design, be careful with how you use these materials, I don't think there's going to be a problem. An example would be flooring. Instead of say a tongue and groove wood floor, which especially with newer material, unless you use pressure treated, it's going to be subject to rot not that many years down the road. So, everybody now on their decks use, I'll just say the plastic decking. And, that's come a long way. And something like that, in my mind, would be something that you could use because, we're talking about restoration and then we have to think about maintenance. So you don't want to build something that's, say, historically accurate, but you got to paint every 3 years. And the floor is probably going to start to rot 5 to 10. So you want to avoid as much of that as possible. So then after that, there are other things on the exterior that may or may not be something that you could ask for CPA money. But the front entry port certainly is. I mean, starting just quickly going through under the first section of roofing, the chimney section in the attic is in pretty rough shape. And that's, functional chimney for the old floor furnace, which, excuse me, Mary Ann, do you use the furnace Okay,
Yeah, that's our.
that's your primary.
Yeah.
So the mini split is more for when you don't need a lot of heat
Right.
or cooling.
On more additional, because
Yeah.
behind the circulation desk, it still stays cold.
Okay,
It's warm, the center of the room.
okay,
But the heat doesn't travel.
okay. So the chimney would, and I forget, oh, that's, I was gonna say, what about the water heater? There's no water. Okay, and water heater is not an issue. So the only thing using that currently is the old floor furnace. And, you know, consideration would be to, put in a high efficiency propane gas furnace, which would eliminate the need for a functional chimney. And the chimney was, I think, roughly 2007, could be wrong, but that's when they replaced a substantial section of the roof. The chimney from the roof up,
2014. Unfortunately.
2000,
Yeah.
I was told 2007,
Yeah, no.
2000,
2007 is when they added well, 2007, the winter, 2007 to 2008, they added that small addition.
oh, okay. I can change all that.
And some of those choices would have to do with the kind of use it had, so if it's
Right.
more intermittent, a simpler
Right.
furnace might be sufficient rather than trying to have it run all the time.
Right, yeah.
Do you run the heat now, let's say on a day that the library opens at 3 o'clock till 6, what happens?
So we turned it down to like 6 to 2 at night when we leave, and then turn it up when we get there. We don't turn it off because it takes a long time to heat the building.
Right.
back up.
Okay. So I guess the question, do you want me to continue through this like
Um,
that? Because this could take some time.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to go through
Okay.
each,
I mean, people could read through it.
yes, yeah. I
And
think it'd
then
be good
maybe
if
at the next
everybody-
meeting, any questions that you have, I could talk about.
But like the big areas that are concerned, right? It's not a weather tight, I mean, it's not, it's not a super weather tight building. It doesn't,
You're
it doesn't,
talking about from an energy standpoint.
from an energy standpoint, yes. And our Energy and Climate Action Committee, it often says, you mean you want to spend
Right,
$200,000 on this building and, you know, it's still gonna have leaky windows and whatever, you know, what, or what would we have to spend in order
Right.
to make it? Or if it's just gonna be used intermittently, like Susie's saying, do we, you know, what's it worth doing,
right.
you know? But it's the heating system is old, the roof is.
Well, the
slate.
the roof slate is fine, really.
Yeah.
The roof should not.
There's there's very little insulation.
There's insulation in the attic.
Yeah.
But I
None
couldn't
of
tell
the
you what's
walls.
on the sidewalls, if any.
Is that something a mass save evaluation could do? I mean, we're talking about resources that might, I wonder if that could happen.
Yeah, I don't know what they can do for retrofitting insulation in sidewalks. You know, attic space that's accessible, crawl space that's accessible. Those are areas that I know they can address and, you know, and then they can often do certain simple weatherization improvements. You know, like windows are expensive. And there are older wood storm windows that are attached from the outside and existing old wood windows, which I don't think are used. I mean, the storm windows, I think, stay on all the time, so the windows really aren't used.
The windows don't open.
Yeah, so if you caulked like the wood storm windows, you can see, you know, they fit, it's wood to wood, you can see these little gaps. Well, if you just caulked and sealed those, and then from the inside caulked and sealed the windows, you're gonna create a dead air space that will be very similar to an insulated glass window
Mhm.
for, dollars as opposed to hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And if you wanted, a functional window, yeah, replacement might be a consideration, but I think that would be an area where you could avoid spending money, even though somebody would say, well, you really should replace the windows.
Right.
So Steve,
And then you keep the old flat.
Right.
Yeah, and on a number of the windows, you have those, I'll call them, thermal shades, which help a lot.
so, I understand, we won't go through all of
Right.
this, but, I mean, you could easily just lift this up and say, oh my goodness, it's like a ton of work that needs to be done there, this is a tear down. I assume that's not the case.
No.
That's what my
Can you-
husband said.
Can you just give us your, 5-minute general overview of like, this building needs a lot of work, or you know what, there's a lot of little things here, but they don't all add up to a huge project. What's your overall assessment?
Well, I think the one expensive project, and I'm thinking probably, I mean, I'm not good with numbers, but I'd say, I'd be surprised if it'd be more than 20,000. Is the front entry porch,
Right.
and that should be stabilized. All right, so that's, but that looks like that could be CPA money. Other things, yeah, there's some rotted siding, there's some rotted trim. You don't have to worry about the plumbing system at the moment.
Right.
I mean, that's only a cost that would be incurred to create one. The heating, currently that heating system, while it's quite old, it's functional. You don't have to replace it. And old, simple things can last for a long time. The electrical, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's mostly lights and, there, a little bit of power is used for the mini split. You could do a lot of different cosmetic things. It's handicap accessible. So that's not a worry.
Most of these just say not applicable, monitor, low priority.
Yeah.
I don't see a high list here.
Yeah, and I will tell you that as we went through things, like I would present the information. I would do the inspection, present the information, and then the committee would determine the action level. And there were things that I would probably rate somewhat higher than what the committee chose to rate them. And I think some of that is because of what you said before, Paul. It's like, oh my God, there's so much to do here. Should we tear it down? Well, it's not the case. I mean, it's just meant to be, say, hopefully a pretty detailed assessment of the condition. And then, you pick and choose. And once you deal with all the initial high priorities, all the buildings, then you could come back and reprioritize everything else.
So, if I could, I just
Yeah.
wanted to, follow up on something that was just, we just talked about. First of all, I know, Mass Save, well, first of all, I would ask, does Mass Save actually do their assessments on municipal
I
buildings?
don't know.
That would be
Find out.
important. If they do, I would suggest that we just get on the list,
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
could take a while. Why not do it a freebie?
Yeah.
We'll get more information. I know they do sidewall insulation. I've dealt with buildings where I've had to go back in and repair the damage that they've done by, taking off siding,
Right.
drilling their holes,
Right.
blowing
Yeah.
in their cellulose, and
Yeah.
they do a lousy job putting
Yeah.
the siding back on.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is a possibility.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, I would, I think we should look into
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
and get on their list
Yep.
if we can.
Good, you can do that. All right. Great. Yeah, and then I think if there are, one of the questions that would come up for us is like, what is it costing right now with that? And I don't know if those costs are isolated, like with that propane heating system in the basement.
They have their own tank, so.
They have their own tank, but we
So
should be
you'll
able to
get a
isolate
separate,
out,
yeah.
like, what is the cost of the gas? And if you put in a more efficient heating system, would that make more, does that make more sense and do something with the building? Do we do that upfront or
Right.
whatever?
And then
So-
that in line with how much is the building gonna be used? because
Right.
If you're turning if you put a programmable thermostat in,
Right,
where it's, down to 60 or whatever you decide at night, and then 2 hours or whatever before there's a meeting, or
Mhm.
someone's gonna use it, it's brought back up, it runs while they're there, drops back down to 60.
right.
And we do not have one now.
There's no
Programmable, right?
programmable thermostat.
You
Not
just
that
do it
I'm
yourself.
aware of.
You raise the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So you raise it before when you go in,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay. So you keep your coat on for a little while.
Yeah.
for your hardy New Englanders, we, I have a big collection of hats.
Virtual and real hats.
Yes.
Well, obviously, in the current library, there's not a lot of space where we could come in and sit
Right.
for long periods of time.
So what I say, if folks have a chance to take a look at this between now and the next meeting, and you have questions for Stephen, then that would be great to just
And we can mail him questions.
yes, can mail in questions, and then what we can do is put on the agenda for the next meeting an opportunity to ask specific questions about this. But I think, this will always, like, the condition of the building, might be a regular topic, but we wouldn't get into the nitty gritty until we decide sort of what the uses are. So kind of getting the answers back from the questionnaire, and then trying to focus in on, what are the uses would be, most important next step. So.
It's great to have this, and we're fortunate to have.
Yes,
expertise,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah, and we have it for
yeah.
every town building,
Building, wow,
so
amazing.
really helps in terms of, thinking through capital planning too. So, no, it's wonderful. Okay, so I think that is what I was hoping to get accomplished for today. And the last thing was just to talk about meeting dates and times. So daytime meetings are good for folks, yes, yeah, and, days of the week is 10 o'clock, a good time. Is just take a look at my schedule. It's Thursday's a good day. Today's Thursday, right?
Yep.
Today
How
is
often?
the 18th. Well, that's another question. I'd like to do it, I'd like to move this along, just,
Yeah.
get momentum, and we could do it every week or every couple of weeks. It's kind of does anybody have major,
Want to try every 2 weeks?
yeah, every 2 weeks, so meet in 2 weeks.
That's good.
So that would be October 2nd.
But could we, Thursday works if we can start at 10:30.
10:30 is good,
So
right, yes, because you're gonna take class. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. That's at 10:30. I realized when I said 10 o'clock, yeah. Abby's starting to teach her classes again. So 10:30, October 2nd. And we'll get Brenda and I will get the agenda together, we'll meet here. And Paul will have gotten comments and have a draft questionnaire for two questionnaires. And if anybody has questions for Stephen, then we'll go through that. Anything else that you need from either me or Brennan at this point, that would be helpful.
I have one question on our charge.
Yep,
If we could go back to that. for a minute.
sure.
Second to the last one about engaging the advice of and counsel of professional advisors.
Yep.
And then what are we talking about?
Well, that would be, let's see if we needed to bring in an engineer.
Yeah.
And we needed to pay them, because we thought, you know, or a design person, to look at the steps.
Okay, that's
So,
possible.
yeah.
Great.
To do a design for CPA. So one thing, Brandon, maybe you and I could do is, I'm not sure, maybe it was you, Paul, who asked the question about grants. Beyond CPA, whether or not there are any other grant possibilities. I could check with Elena Cohen in Joe Comerford's office. Once upon a time, it was something that I thought might work, and then I realized it didn't, because it needed to be for a mixed use facility. Mary Jo, you asked earlier about whether or not anybody else had designs on the building. One person said, why don't we have a coffee shop in the center?
That was the immediate response
Yes.
that I got from everybody that I spoke with.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I don't mean to dismiss it outright, but I'm sort of dismissing it outright because I think if we were ever to use that building for anything that was non-municipal, we'd have to go through a legal disposition of the property, because if you take public property and you use it for a kind of private use, which is what that would be, you have to go through a public process. So it's called Chapter 30B, state statute. And so you advertise and you get proposals, and then, you know, somebody would have to lease it, and it's competitive. And I would imagine for a facility like that, you could never make any money.
Yeah.
Our little co-op can barely make it. Yeah. And I don't think there's a viable commercial use for the building, but, you know, if we come to the point where we say, I mean, there are municipalities that have disposed. And I use that word dispose, it's not like tearing down, but they've disposed of like old schools or, you know, old municipal buildings through that public Chapter 30B process. And then developers come in and they do housing. You know, there's lots of examples around in other communities. Developer comes in, they get all kinds of public money and they create affordable housing, whatever. This is a really small building. Could somebody make a viable commercial enterprise out of that? Well, I don't know. And what would the town get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, to me, the potential of considering like a public-private partnership of some sort that could potentially generate revenue isn't. I mean, I'm guessing that if you ask people in town, that's the first thing that they're gonna
That they
say.
would want.
And the reason is that they're not, as I will count myself as one of these people, not particularly aware of the needs of town government,
Mhm.
right? So they're,
Mm.
you know, people's immediate thought is probably gonna be, what would I like there? Where would I like to go? Where's, you know, could there be a gathering place that was more enticing to me than the SAC at the moment? You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
Or at different times of day. So
Right,
I, you know, just be prepared. I'm guessing that that's gonna come up
right.
at some point.
And for that reason, I think the fourth dot down, committee shall engage public and solicit public input. I feel like that should come after we've done a lot of the footwork, because people don't know what goes on in town hall. So I don't wanna invite people in and have
This
them
point.
do their thing and then go like, oh, but can't. And so, or the town needs this. So I feel that this is often put too soon, because the public is very uninformed about the big situation. So before we issue the written report to the select board, there might be a time to go over some of the things to figure out what was the weight that made this report head in this direction versus that.
I like that idea, and I would add that maybe when it's put out to the public, maybe some of the issues that would be involved with a coffee shop or any kind of commercial
Right.
use.
Right,
would
could be
be-
described.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
described, because I think, like you say, people, it's like conceptually, the
Oh,
idea.
it's great, yeah.
of the Coffee shop, I just wanna make sure there's soft serve available as well.
Like immediately.
Yeah, you know, the thought of something like that is wonderful, but I don't think it could be a commercially viable
Viable,
unless you're doing it as a hobby and
Right.
you don't make any money and you don't
Right.
mind losing money.
Right, right,
And you're gonna do mouse patrol after that.
right,
Any place
And-
there's food, you're gonna.
And you're now gonna need plumbing,
right, right, right,
so
Right.
you've gotta put in,
yeah, thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
of dollars, right. Um,
But using the space for an occasional coffee club meeting
Yeah.
space or
Right.
something, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
should be fine, I
Yeah.
assume.
and the library will be
Right.
available.
Right,
too.
well, Fulham said that I didn't give to me, and I said, but that's what the library is for.
Yeah,
You know, we
Yeah.
have built.
and you have a,
Yeah,
yeah, you have a,
that is
kitchen.
different than the other put together. places we
Yeah.
have. And I've been saying to people for years, it'll be used for some, that the select board will have a process, but that I think it'll be used for some practical purpose, because I'm aware of the municipal needs. of
it
town.
needs.
Right.
But who knows, you know?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, and I suppose, if we came to the point where we said there's no real need. So we could dispose of this property, we could have put it out to the highest bidder. And we could say, just like, I'm trying to think around here, if there's any example, I mean, the. One example I know, like in Ware, had an old school and they were disposing of it and they ended up putting senior housing in there. So they went through the whole request for proposals, process and, ended up putting, putting senior housing, but the developer
Didn't they
came
do
in.
that with the building at the lake, and then nothing has come of it?
Right, they
Right.
did with the,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
house, they did
Yeah.
put in an RFP.
Right, and then nothing,
Yeah. No, nobody.
Right.
bid.
much
That's it.
bigger building with plumbing.
Okay, well, thank you all, so much for, again, for your willingness to, serve and for taking on, tasks. And so we'll meet in 2 weeks at 10:30 here. And, Paul, everybody can you give us your email address?
Yes, you can use the Lions, LYONSPP at Verizon.net. Now the whole world has that, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, all right, great.
And I look forward to getting your,
Yeah.
your input.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
And mine, if you have any questions.
Yes,
Would be Dalmus, DALLMUS. SR@iCloud.com.
great. Well, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.